Welcome to Dollar Gujarati, a show about successful Gujarati entrepreneurs and professionals in America. We talk with them about their ideas and struggles on the road to success in this land of opportunity. As immigrants ourselves, we want to understand the different paths that successful immigrant Gujaratis have taken to establish themselves. This will also help us to navigate our journey in America. Today, we have as our guest Mr. Sunil Nayak. Mr. Sunil is the quintessential Gujarati immigrant in America. He came here in search of a better opportunity, worked as a blue collar desk job in a motel, and has now grown his business to 25 motels on the East Coast. And if that is not an achievement in itself, he has founded Chalo Gujarat, an arts and cultural mega event held every year in New Jersey with more than 30,000 Gujaratis attending from all around the world. Mr. Sunil is also credited with bringing Prime Minister Narendra Modi as chief guest in his event. We are honored to have you on our show, sir.
Thank you. The honor is mine. So great to see you youngsters doing this. We have had experience of doing interviews with much elderly people, especially in America. People of your age are not as much interested. It's so great to see you guys doing this.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're really interested in knowing how people before us, in the generations before us, have made their mark in this land.
Mm.
Uh, so what was your story of entering America? How old were you, and how did you decide that you want to come to America?
Being a son of a bureaucrat in Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and again bureaucrats of those times when way much lesser, if any, corruption that was there, and being a second class BCom graduate, didn't have much of a future there. And my father had, sort of taken a vow that he'll not allow any of his children to become a government employee. So there wasn't really much of a future there. We all know what the business scenario was, back in India during those times. The one hobby that I had developed, right in the childhood was that of reading, and having, read a few things about the outside countries, I thought my future was better outside than in India. Actually, we were on a cricket tour when I left over there. When I left India, I didn't tell my parents that I was planning to stay back and planning not to come back. So after we left and reached Delhi is when my brother told my father, based on what I know, he's not going to come back. My father called up, before calling me, he called up my manager, the cricket team manager, saying that if my son doesn't come back, I'll take you to court. The manager came running to me and said, you better talk to your father. And so I spoke with him and I told him that, listen, I don't have much of a future. I know your principles. And so I'm going to try there. And the only thing that he told me was that, he was sort of convinced. And the only thing that he told me was that don't stay illegally over there and don't do anything illegal. And
Okay.
I promised him those two things. Came to the country, and the struggle started from day one. Uh,
So how old were you when you took this
I
huge
was
step of
23. I had just come out of college, and I was 23.
so you came here on a with a cricket team to play
Mhm.
some county level cricket matches.
Actually, the fact is that our tour was going to be in England and in America,
Okay.
and we went to UK and played some matches there, and started looking to. I told my manager that, listen, I'm already past my third year. I've not even played university, so forget about Ranji, and I don't have much of a future there. So please don't force me to play the matches here. I'm going to see if I have, if I can find something here. And so I went to a travel agent. You have to apply through a travel agent, and he said that you cannot do it. You have to apply from your home country. That's a law. So you cannot apply from UK. And I said that, listen, I have this three-page explanation that's there. Let me. I said at the most they'll say no. That there's no harm in sending this over. So that's what we did. And, next day I just went there casually. And as soon as he saw me, he jumped out of his desk and, he came out and hugged me and said, I can't believe this, that against the law, they have granted you visa. Finally, અમેરિકા ઉતર્યા ને જ્યારે ત્યાંથી ઇન્ડિયાથી એક ડાયરી લઈને આવેલો હતો. સો આઈ હેડ અ ફ્યુ નેમ્સ એન્ડ એડ્રેસીસ, ફોન નંબર્સ, અને બે ત્રણ જણને કહી રાખ્યું હતું. એમાંથી એક જણ લેવા આવવાનો હતો. જ્યારે ઉતર્યો, બહાર જોયું તો I couldn't find anybody.
Which city was this?
This was at JFK, New York
Okay.
City. And so I couldn't find him. I called him up. So I called him up and said કે હું અહીંયા ઉતરી ગયો છું ને I was waiting to hear કે XYZ ત્યાં જ અહીંયા ત્યાં જ ઊભા હશે કે આમ હશે કે તેમ હશે કે આ છે તે છે. પણ he immediately said કે યા બરોબર છે, પણ મારે એક કામ આવી ગયું એટલે હું નથી આવી શક્યો. અને so I was waiting again to hear કે તું કાં તો આ કેબ લઈને આવી જા અથવા તો આમ કરીને આ કેબ. The gentleman didn't say anything like that. So I could figure out. So I hung up the phone. બીજો નંબર કાઢ્યો, ફોન કર્યો. The gentleman said કે મારે કાલે વહેલી જોબ છે બહુ, I cannot come. એટલે you could figure out કે આ excuses હતા. ત્રીજાએ જ્યારે ના પાડી એટલે then the first thing that I did was કે પહેલા તો એ ડાયરી હતી એ ફાડીને રાખી દીધી મેં. I trashed it. કે આ જો અમને આમ હશે ને મારો કોન્ફિડન્સ તૂટી જશે. So that's how the journey started, standing at the airport, not knowing where to go, who to call. But it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is I don't think anybody would have had such an adventurous journey into America. So you threw away your diary, quite an adventure happening out here. And then a stranger actually offered you a ride to his place. Somebody helped you out.
હાજી. So એમણે મને રાઈડ આપી. જતા મને પૂછ્યું એમણે કે તમારે do you want to do a job? અને I said that's exactly what I want to do. તો મને કહે કે મારા બોસ ઇન્ડિયા જાય છે and he is looking for somebody to work at his desk. I work for the same boss, but my motel is in Long Island. This one is in Long Island City in Queens. And if you are interested, then I can take you in for interview. So I said that will be great. And so that Mr. Rakesh Patel, he took me to his place. And next day he took me back in New York, Queens ma. ઉતારે મને ત્યાં interview માં. There was this gentleman who was there, the owner of the motel. And so I was waiting. He casually started asking me questions. ક્યાં ના છો, શું છે, શું ભણ્યો છે. અને એમ કરતા કરતા ટાઈમ જતો હતો ને મને એમ થયું કે રાકેશ ભાઈ હમણાં પોણો કલાકમાં પાછા આવશે. એટલે then after half an hour I could not hold myself. I asked him, when will the interview start? And you have this concept of interview where there is somebody sitting across the desk and there are a couple of people sitting there and asking you these business questions and this and that. So એ કહે કે નહીં આજ બસ આજ ઇન્ટરવ્યુ છે, તું કાલથી કામ ચાલુ કરી દે. So that was a relief.
So yeah,
stay motel in New York City, in a extremely rough area. And but again, it was a place where 100% of your clientele is that for drugs and prostitution. And when I say rough, you have to be there at that. I mean, at the times of those late 80s and early 90s na time ma New York City ni andar, you have to see it to believe what kind of area or what kind of place that was. People taking out guns, pointing at you, finding dead bodies in the guest rooms. Those were the routines. And you see right outside the window, you see people getting mobbed, people getting robbed, people being beaten up in the parking lot. Suddenly you visit the parking lot in the morning and all 30 cars windshields are broken. So and these are much lesser things than what I mentioned earlier. That those of finding dead bodies and finding guns in the rooms, and so it was pretty rough. And then you know I'll just give you one of my. I mean, I'll narrate one of the incidents that I had. Okay? When I was doing nights, it was raining pretty hard. We had those cameras back then. It was black and white cameras. Uh, it had slowed down. It was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the night. Suddenly, I saw that three, four loko. They entered the motel with the masks on. All of the three, pointed the gun at me, and I said, don't move. And the fourth guy entered with a huge sledgehammer, climbed on the registration desk on the other side, and banged it out with the sledgehammer. Broke the bulletproof glass. One of them came inside, opened the door. All of them three, you know, took all the money that they had to, and then they came to me, all three guns pointed, making me lie down. And they asked me, where have you taped this? Where is the recording on this? And so I said, sir, we don't record. And I was just watching movie, and they thought, okay, I'm watching cameras now. We are recording it. And so they would not believe me. They said, no, you are recording it. Tell me, or I'm going to shoot you. So, and actually, we were not recording it. So I again said that, listen, I mean, Nathi, we don't record. And so then the guy asked him that, you want to take a shot? That's all I remember last. And ત્યાં એક બાર પોલીસની એમાંની એક siren વાગી. એમાં પેલા એક જણે કીધું કે let's go. But before that, they said, shoot him. So they took, 2-3 shots. Fortunately, I mean, they missed the shots. And, all of them, three went outside. Finally, I thought they are gone. So I got up. And again, they, came in and said, did I ask you to get up? And they hit the butt on my head. I mean, the gun butt on my head, and asked me to lay down again. The thing is that basically I was robbed. It was the whole scene was it was horrible. But what was more hurtful was that after everything was done, and when that was my first experience with a robbery. So I called the boss saying that, listen, we just had a robbery. So he said, કે કેવી રીતે શું થયું? એટલા પૈસા લઈ ગયા ને આ છે ને તે છે ને. So I thought he'll say, okay, don't worry, I'll drive down right now, this, that, whatever else. Nothing. Just said, કઈ વાંધો નહીં, room કેટલા થયા છે? And thought, this is what I have to deal with. Not to mention, I mean, not to say he was a bad person, but none of that shook my confidence to stay back or to do something here.
This
That was the
is
start.
like a Bollywood movie.
Well,
Reality is far more like truth is stranger than fiction kind of a thing. But
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's a you mentioned a great thing that like it didn't shake your confidence. I mean it would ભલભલાનું confidence નીકળી જાય, and they'll be like, અમારે આ કામ નથી કરવું, આપણે પાછા જઈએ, ઇન્ડિયામાં જ સારા છીએ. But you stayed back, and then how did you go from like being a front desk clerk?
See, as far as confidence, like you said, કે લાઈફમાં જેટલી opportunities આવતી જાય એટલી વાર life does challenge you every time to try you out, whether you can take it. Do you stick to your aims or not? But time and again, it will keep testing you. One of the biggest things that we face is the journey is two ways. While your journey to become something is happening, there is a reverse journey also that's happening. You are unbecoming what you are. It's even more difficult, that you have to become something that you don't know of, and at the same time you have to unbecome what you've always been. That's more what makes it at times a little more difficult, and still you have to find that balance to reach where you have to.
Yeah, that is true. So Pashi, so how did you like go from being an
So I
employee
worked.
to owning a hotel?
Yeah, so I worked there for our jobs where, I mean, there were two desk clerks. It was a 12-hour shift that we had. And, we were paid a fixed sum of $250 a week. And I didn't really have too many vices, if you call them vices. And so pretty much everything that we had was in savings.
But you can
Varsadma,
like that $250 thing is I mean $250 at that time is a lot of money.
it was a lot of money, especially when you convert it into times 12. Back then it was 12 rupees. It was a lot of money, and so I started saving those two. I mean, the $250 a week, and was talking to a few people, the visitors who would come there. I would keep talking to them as to what businesses they are in, what is the safest, and a business that would need least capital. And at that time, the Gujaratis or the Indians had experience of these small convenience stores, and that's where they said that you don't need much of a capital. And so I had figured out and I had planned that out, that for a little while I'll have to buy a convenience store. That will have to be my first business. And then whatever I can make out of there is how I'll get into the hotel industry. And I collected a few $1,000s, started looking for business, and then so there were a few systems that I had set up while I was there for a year and a half, in terms of accounting and quite a few things which were not as organized. So I set those systems up, and some extent it was more to make my work easier also, and more of it was to impress the boss. And so he said that, okay, fine, if you don't want to be part of this motel, but if you are doing anything in terms of business, let me know. We can do it in partnership. And so that's what I did. I used to work for about 12 hours, and then in the morning you go out to look for business, so you get those 2-3 hours of sleep. But then I found a 7-Eleven in Ozone Park in Queens, and I told my boss, I said, I've finalized a deal in Ozone Park, and it's a 7-Eleven. And he said that we could do it, but he warned me. He said, you know what Ozone Park is, right? And I said, no, I don't. So he said, that's the headquarters of John Gotti. I hope you know that. Where your 7-Eleven is all, the entire neighborhood is a mafia neighborhood. I said, well, the 7-Eleven has survived for so long, and it can't be worse than where I am now. That's how I bought my first 7-Eleven. But finally, after buying the first
So
7-Eleven,
how much did you have to put up to buy the 7-Eleven, and did you take your previous boss as a partner?
yes, I did. So we did it in partnership. I bought the store for $100,000. I had the owners or the seller who had taken a note of $50,000. So we had to come up with $50,000 plus the inventory. So about $65,000 is what we needed to buy the store. I had $25,000. So I had taken a loan of about $15,000 from my boss, because I needed some money for my initial setup also. And so we went into 50-50 partnership. The store did well. And then within started looking for more stores in New Jersey, where the stores were a little cheaper. To lease it out, it was much easier. And so within next 2.5 years, I had about 13 convenience stores.
So what was the business model that you kind of followed? Like you bought the stores, but then you hired people to run it?
It was more like leasing it out. It's not a formal lease that you have, but the term that was used was ke chalawa
Correct.
apelo che, which was at that time was a new concept. So what would happen is the basic thing is that you have to find a good deal where there is enough room for everybody to make money. So that is a key. If I bought the store for say $75,000, જે seller હોય એની પાસે $25,000 નોટ લઉં, so it's costing me $50,000. જે ચલાવવા માટે જેને હું આપું store, I would take a deposit of $25,000 from him. And I would give him a purchase option. After 2 years, if you feel that the store is good or right for you, then you have the right to buy the store for $90,000. And he has to pay me a fixed amount, every month of say $4,000. And the convenience stores at that time had that kind of a room or that kind of profit in it. So at an investment of $25,000, I was getting $4,000 a month, of which I have to pay monthly installments to the seller I had a note of $25,000.
So, for our listeners, a seller note is a loan provided by the seller of a property to the purchaser.
That is where, and at the end of 2 years, just about in every store, stores were good enough where the જે ચલાવવા આપ્યો હોય, the tenant or the lessee, or call him whatever, he would exercise his option for $90,000. So against $25,000 I would be making $3,000 a month, and at the end of 2 years I was getting $90,000 for it, of which whatever balance is there for the seller, the rest was there to buy another store. So that's how I multiplied. And some of them would be, the stores would be doing so well that within few months the tenant or the lessee would come to you and say, Sunil bhai, 2 વર્ષ પહેલા અત્યારે 6 મહિનામાં buy થઈ શકે. And obviously at that time you negotiate કે અત્યારે કરવું હોય તો I have to make some money for 2 years. 6 મહિના પહેલા લેવો હોય તો 90,000 માં ના થાય. I can give it to you for 110. And that those profits is what is your capital for your next store to buy. So that's how I had 13 convenience stores. Although I was very clear in my mind that I'll not give this business more than 4 years.
Oh,
Eventually, I wanted to go into hotel business, so I needed to collect enough capital, to be able to buy a real hotel and a little better motel. I should, what was there in Queens.
so how were you so sure that all these 13 stores would be profitable and you would be able to pay back the seller's notes?
See, the due diligence, was was pretty easy and basic, where you look at the receipts or the invoices for the purchases that he has done, but then you ask for 5 years of invoices from him. If you had so much of sale, then you have to have certain amount of purchases. And then there was a study period where you would have somebody there for a month. Again, there are tricks that are being played, but again, I those were the times when most of the Americans who were selling the stores, they were pretty honest about what the sales were. So you would not have to do the due diligence as much as you would have to do now. So based on the sales, based on the study period that you had, where you would physically have a couple of guys standing at the register to make sure that the sales is there, and again the profits are also there. So those are the basics that you learn, and it was no rocket science. It was pretty easy.
So,
uh,
how did you set this? How did you set this goal of okay, only 4 years you want to be in the convenience store business, and what was the motivation behind having the goal of I want to go into the motel business or the hotel business?
I mean, like, you want to, go into a proven business. I never overestimated myself, and like I said, if I saw so many of these visitors or friends of my boss who had been successful in this business, then I could see that if these guys cannot fail, then there's no reason for me to fail. That was going to be, my initial, and not that I would have stopped at the motels or hotels, but at that time I could not think beyond hotels, honestly.
Okay.
And the other businesses that were proven and which were better would have needed much larger capital also. Being a much more social person, hospitality, I seem to have started liking the hospitality business.
Okay. So, how did you buy your first motel? How much did that cost, and who were your partners? And
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you, I bought the rest of the convenience stores that I bought were in New Jersey. And so while visiting stores, you come across so many people, and you start looking for the exercise that I had done for the convenience stores. While looking around, while visiting, and seeing a few properties, finally a property in Mount Holly in New Jersey is the one that we were able to agree on, and that was my first motel, 64 room motel, not so busy highway, and pretty clean property, clean operations, one with small bar and restaurant. So costed me. I bought it for $1.5 million, but by that time I had built my credit where it was. I had to come up with about $350,000,
Okay.
and into a partnership with someone. Again, wanted to take somebody who had some experience of hotels or motels. So after buying this property, having income from these convenience stores, I struck a deal for a property in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, for a property which was an independent one then, but had a potential to be converted into a Holiday Inn.
Okay.
And so in year 1996, that's the property that I bought, and I converted that to a Holiday Inn. And within the second year, I won a few quality excellence awards also from and for that property. Uh,
So when you say Holiday Inn, that is a big chain of motels and hotels in America. So
right.
how did you, so was this like a franchisee for Holiday Inn?
Yeah. In the franchise systems, you own the property. All you are doing is you are using their name, you are using their flag to for the business and their goodwill, and you are paying a certain percentage of fees to them. So it's a typical franchise model where you pay
Correct.
certain percentage of your business to them for using their name and their setup that's there.
So then did Holiday Inn actually help you identify the hotel and do they help you to set up the
No,
processes?
no, they don't. They don't help you in identifying hotels, or that buying process is all yours. That is something
Okay.
that you have to do. They only get involved once you have identified once. Either if you are, say, in the process of conversion, they will send somebody out, and their representative will come out and check whether this property is good enough to become a Holiday Inn or not.
Okay.
Once they have done that, then they give you a punch list that this for this property to become a Holiday Inn, you have to do such and such and such things. You have to convert that property to those standards, and they come back, inspect, give you their reservation systems, their front desk system, and you have to go through their trainings as to what standards are to be implemented at the property, and you have to follow those standards.
Got it. So, very similar to how franchising works in with say McDonald's or Subway.
Yeah, for any franchise, most of the franchisors would work on the same. There, obviously,
Okay.
the percentage of the franchise fees would differ from franchise to franchise. Right.
Okay. And so that was how you got your first few motels. So, have you been following the same process where you are generating income from your existing properties and then taking on more credit and opening new motels?
Uh, then the processes, do change from uh, the basic hotel, basic due diligence, basic negotiations. Now, as you move, or climb higher on the ladder, those things become a little more intense, and you start enjoying those things also.
After quite an adventurous episode 1, we will meet Mr. Sunil Nayak again in the next episode, where we will talk about how he translated his learnings from the motel industry into starting Chalo Gujarat and then Chalo India and then AIANA, and how he brought Prime Minister Narendra Modi to an audience of 30,000 Gujaratis in New Jersey. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening to the show this week. And if you want to ask us any questions or want to see someone specific on our show, write to us at dollargujarati@gmail.com. You can also tweet to us at dollargujarati. Make sure you don't miss any episode by subscribing to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or however it is that you get your podcast. I'm Dakshaday Shah, and you've been listening to Dollar Gujarati.